Hello, I'm Jean-Philippe Courtois, and this is Positive Leadership, the podcast that helps you grow as an individual, as a leader, and ultimately as a global citizen. IKEA has been the world's largest furniture retailer since 2008. Roughly 882 million of us visited IKEA stores last year in 2022, driven by IKEA's vision to create a better everyday life for the many people. It is the Ingka Group which brings the IKEA brand to its customers globally. My guest today, Jesper Brodin, the visionary CEO of Ingka Group, is well known for his exceptional leadership qualities and unwavering commitment to ambitious, sustainable goals. Under his guidance, Ingka Group has not only embraced stakeholder governance, but has also set new benchmarks for corporate sustainability. By 2030, IKEA is committed to only using renewable and recycled materials and to reduce the company's total climate footprint by an average of 70% per product. That's quite a bit. Yet surprisingly little is known about the man behind the organization. So it's a great pleasure to welcome you and see you back again, Jesper, onto the podcast. Warm welcome, Jesper.
Thank you so much for this opportunity and this wonderful introduction.
So I'd like to start, Jesper, with what I know about your bringing. I don't know much, but a little bit that you share in some forums. I think you were born in Gothenburg, very nice city. By the way, I was there in the summertime with my family and went to the islands on the coast. Wonderful, wonderful area. And you also had a master's degree in industrial engineering. But can you tell us to start with about your childhood and the way your parents, your family, helped define some of your core beliefs, your culture, at the end of the day, your values and who you are as a person?
All right. Wow. Thank you. That's a very interesting question. And I think, when I reflect upon my childhood, growing up in the 80s in Sweden, one thing that sticks out for me that I realize now being 50 plus is that there was sort of an era where we all believed in that from now on things will only get better. So my parents had a better life standard than their parents, and there was something in passing on the optimism and passing on the belief in that from now on it's going to be better and better.
For the next generations.
Yeah, you can say it. And I think it sits with me also as a warm memory of those years, but also sometimes as a struggle, being in a world where things are going up, down, left, right in many aspects, and that deeply disturbs me. And I realize it has a little bit to do with my childhood, probably.
And what about this sentiment you just shared about the optimism that we used to have, for the next generation? Do you have the same for your kids and for the new generation as well?
Well, I with my 3 teenagers, and also with being engaged so we have basically a forum of young leaders, young activists, 25 young leaders, amazing people ranging from 17 to 27 years old. And what I see today is that there is hesitation, there is deep concerns, and there is sometimes even despair and loss of hope that there is a brighter future ahead of us, which impacts me quite deeply, I think, emotionally, not only from the rational side to resolve the issues that we see of the world today, but actually to be a contributor to build hope. And of course, build hope on the right premises, not only empty optimism, so to say.
Now, we'll come back to the way you are definitely enabling to build hope within the company you lead and outside as well. Maybe a little bit more coming back again to your childhood, Jesper, if you don't mind, on maybe 1 or 2 values or beliefs that you believe you inherited from your parents, either your dad, your mom, sometimes it's a granddad, who knows, who's been inspiring you.
Very good. I think one of the things that was, I think even in Sweden in those days that was a bit special was that I would say the value of equality was definitely in our family, but not as a politically motivated, but it was more, I think, the love between my father and mother made my father actually take some steps back in order for my mother to make a career, and that was a natural step for him, I think, and such. I believe that there was equality was embedded in as a value in the upbringing of me and my sisters.
Very interesting, particularly these days when you think about equality, gender equality, and more. I don't know if you watched the movie Barbie over the summertime.
No, I haven't.
Okay,
I'm not there yet.
So I will not tease you on Barbie. Okay.
But my family members have, and they were deeply impressed by it. So,
Okay. So just continuing our discussion, Jesper, I've had a number of wonderful guests on the podcast, including successful CEOs who share with us, some unique moments in their lives, and in a way, changed them forever. A couple of examples I had. Doug Conant, the former CEO of Campbell Soup in the US. He was fired when he was actually 32, and as a result, started to consider what was holding him back from realizing his full potential. So he was really on the wrong start he made. He was Yeti, and he does a CEO. Another leader I'm sure you know well, former Unilever CEO Paul Polman, right? He shared with us on the podcast this crucible moment in 2008 when he was caught up in the terrorist attack at the Taj Mahal Hotel in Mumbai.
Wow.
An experience which made him realize the profound link between poverty and violence and changed his life as well. And last but not least, very exciting leader, Bozoma St. John's. Used to be boss at Netflix and Apple as well. She lost her husband Peter from cancer, and based on that deeply, I would say, of course, involving experience in her life, she's made a big decision. Actually, she actually even wrote a book on that, to live her life urgently. So I gave you those examples, but I'm sure you like to share one defining moment in your life, Jesper, that had a profound impact on the leader you've become today.
Okay.
I know it's personal.
I think, no, but it's fine. I think it's very good. We are personal also because that, as you said, there are these defining moments. The thing that pops to mind instantly for me.
Yeah.
So I had my first international assignment was with IKEA. I applied for the job as a country manager for the trading setup and structure in Pakistan.
I heard that.
And I got the job. I was 25 years old.
Yes.
And funny enough, which is a story in itself, after a year I asked my manager who came from a visit on Singapore, how come you take a 25-year-old, no IKEA experience, no experience in Pakistan, and offer this opportunity? And then he told me I was the only one who applied for the job. So I think sometimes we think we're special, don't we? But moving to Pakistan was a defining moment in my career, riddled by conflicts those days. There were basically, from a security perspective, it was partly a dangerous place. At the heart of society, there was a number of industrialists that I would say had an incredibly modern view on people and business. And we built the business together, which of course was the reason I was there. But what became a struggle for me personally was to see some of the values or the principles or even the structures in society was not there when it comes to both the people and planetary aspects. And I remember having a bit of a personal crisis also on one hand, wanting to perform, wanting to show myself as a leader. At the same time, seeing things and experiencing things that were difficult to digest. Which then became, not only for me, but these were the times, I think, when IKEA woke up to a responsibility as with a question to say, do we apply our values only on our in-house, or does that apply for the end-to-end, so to say? And luckily, we took the decision to go that route. And the defining thing for me was, I thought at that moment that would mean sacrifice in business or whatnot. But so my journey throughout IKEA has been to actually be part of proving that it is good business to be a good business. So that happened in Pakistan, which was, incredibly strong from both environmental and people side. And as we developed the business, which is still doing great, by the way.
Yeah, it's a very, very interesting story. And was there in particular any personal or corporate value that you felt was most at risk and that you are tested, right? As a young leader in Pakistan, leading IKEA there, and say, wow, should I be firm on that value? Or maybe not, because the societal construct that you just discussed, which is very different from Sweden for sure. Any particular?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think Jean-Philippe, there was even in the vision of IKEA, we then, as you shared, so we have a vision of creating a better everyday life for the many people. So we're about better life.
Yep.
And the conflict for me was, how can we create better life for consumers and not for people in the value chain? How could that not be? How could that contradiction be okay? And I guess at those days we then came to the conclusion, being also new in our expansions, these were new dilemmas for IKEA, not only for me, but we came to the conclusion it was not possible. There would be a denial for all of us. So thereby started the long journey for us on actually how do you find a way to not only serve your consumers, but actually include everyone in your value chain, which I think we do today, from IKEA Foundation to supply chain to ourselves, our employees, our partners, and our customers.
Thanks so much, and thanks so much for having raised your hand to go to Pakistan, because I know in many large global corporates, not many people still today will raise their hands to go to Pakistan or equivalents of Pakistan these days. I think it was a wise, while actually courageous decision you took at the time.
I got the advice from a couple of people. My cousin who used to be early into China, into trading, and he also said, if you take the risk and take the chance, but the loss is very little, but the gain if you make it in Pakistan. You have an opportunity to make a name for yourself within the company, and I think he was right after all.
That's a wonderful advice. So actually early in your career as well, I think, Jesper, you benefited from some great advice from a mentor, which was to learn as much as you can and take every opportunity to educate yourself and participate to the fullest in all work activities, and perhaps more importantly, to avoid following the shimmering objectives of a title. So can you tell us about that advice of not being obsessed by a title or position, and how it influenced you back then and hopefully continues to influence you today, although you are at the very top now of the company today. So.
No, but I still remember when you mention it, I still remember, and I think a lot of young leaders maybe who have the opportunity to listen to this would agree to a certain stress of what is this going to lead to, what is my next step, and so on. Yeah. And I had lots of that anxiety, and starting in Pakistan, it was important for me not to be forgotten, so to say, in any ways. But the advice I got was really to focus on the opportunity that you have at hand, and it seems like a basic and simple advice, but it gave me calm and it gave me focus, and ever since I have decided with myself that I don't, all the thoughts about what's going to happen next, I simply push them away. And that helps me not only focus, but it helps me be happy what I do.
Yes.
But it also helps me to avoid, which I've done a couple of times, opportunities of promotion or other job opportunities which would maybe be smart from a career planning perspective. And I try to avoid that and look at how can I develop myself.
Yes.
And in the maybe best advice I ever got was from my mother, actually, when I was young. And that was as simple as to say, if you find something where you're, she said, Jesper, if you find something where you're good at, and that also makes you happy, then that's a good place to be. And sometimes we might be good at things, but it doesn't really make us happy. I have a lot of things I'm not good at. So, but the combination of the two, I think, leads to something more than a career, right?
I more than agree with you. We'll come back to that later on in terms of what are the things you're the most good at or give you the most pleasure at in your life, overall, later on. But let's go back now, not just to you, but to your company's history, which is pretty amazing. My understanding IKEA was founded in 1943 in Älmhult, Sweden, by Ingvar Kamprad, the IK, the famous IK in IKEA. Yes. When I hosted Paul Polman on a podcast, he told us as well about the story of Unilever's inception at the end of the 19th century in Britain to address the issues of hygiene in society. And how, as he became the CEO, he took the founder's core values and translated that into the needs of today to reconnect the entire company and leadership team with Unilever's roots and social mission. So, as the incoming CEO, when you took your role as CEO, did you find it important to refresh your team and employees' memory on IKEA's history and to tell the story of Ingvar Kamprad.
Very good. Now, I would say both and. So,
Yeah.
Ingvar was an incredible profile and entrepreneur. And interesting enough, I just came back from an excellent trip to China, the first one in 4 years, meeting some ministers
Yes.
who met him back in 2007 and made a lovely impression. So he still seems to help us. So he was a visionary. He was a business entrepreneur. He was not necessarily so interested in strategy or administration or structure. So vision and then hands-on was his style.
Yes.
And over the years, I think he grew, as the company became successful, he grew an interest and passion in how do we actually contribute to the goodness of this world. So at actually the early 80s, he gave away the group to set up a structure of a foundation, which still is the sole owner of the company. So there's €0 that leaves our system. Either it's reinvested into the company or it's given to charitable purposes, which is quite beautiful.
It is.
So you know, to a certain extent, the values that he represented, I believe, are timeless. The values of togetherness, the values of leading through setting good examples, the idea of actually having a purpose, serving humanity rather than just earning money. So all of these are good. At the same time, I like to believe there is it's important not to strike a balance, but to strike a dynamic relation between loving the past and creating the future.
Of course.
And there is, of course, a risk in a strong concept company like IKEA that we become arrogant, or we become afraid of accepting the challenges of change or changing society. So when I started this assignment, I realized through customers and co-workers that painfully enough that we had been maybe leaning too much towards our past successes. So we were a little bit also in line of your business, Jean-Philippe. We were very analog. We had pushed to the future everything digital, not everything, but a lot. And we hadn't really taken a deep thought about the business operating model for the future. Yeah. So I think, love the past, but you need to stay very open and alert to what's happening that places you into the future. Like you referred to Paul Polman, he did so elegantly to translate it into the next model, so to say.
No, I love that statement you made. Actually, very similar in a way to what Satya Nadella, my manager and CEO, of course, Microsoft has said once. Honor your past, your traditions, but lead with innovation to shape the future. It's like you need to balance both, actually.
Yeah, you need to. And I think the interesting thing is that if you put them up against each other, the past is concrete, it's clear, it's defined. The future is not. So the future is more fragile. Ideas are more fragile. And therefore, I think one of the values that our founder always kept central was the right and the obligation to make mistakes, and the drive for entrepreneurship. And still, I have many moments when that makes me a bit concerned as a big company and big group that we are rejecting the new a little bit too much. So there are many ways we try to go about that. My most desperate moment, I've issued what I call Go Bananas cards, which I'm handing out.
Go Bananas, okay.
Yes. It's an idea. So basically the card gives you a license. It looks like a driver's license, but it gives you an encouragement to make mistakes. And if you make a mistake and you have to apologize, I have already co-signed the excuse there. So you have a friend in me if you then do something that didn't really work out well. This is just one of the ways we try to make it a bit playful as well. But to say,
interesting.
IKEA wasn't just there. It was developed through entrepreneurs, risk takers.
Yes.
And probably 9 out of 10 experiments didn't work out as we thought. Yeah. But it led to the IKEA that we see today. So we need to continue that spirit.
No, love those bananas cards. Just continue on the same kind of discussion thread, Jesper. I understand when you became CEO back in 2017, you took a trip around the world, meeting with all your colleagues, co-workers, from management to really frontline shop floor workers, to listen to their opinions, their feelings. It reminded me actually of a discussion I had with Hubert Joly, who used to be the CEO of Best Buy in the US. And Hubert Joly, when he became the CEO of Best Buy, he did a very extensive tour of all the stores in the US, on the ground, and really trying to unleash the values, the fears, the hopes, the excitement, and indeed what could be the mission of the company that he was trying to actually to reset, because at the time in that case Best Buy was actually in pretty bad shape, so he had to do a major intervention. Anyway, in your case, how was it important for you to gain a deeper understanding of, because you've been in IKEA for many years, so you've been growing within the company, so you could say, well, what do you need to do that? What did you learn? What have you done anything differently as a starting CEO because of that? Yeah.
So I think, no, it was very interesting. So in spite of having had many years in IKEA previous to taking this assignment, I had not. So I'm grown up in the supply chain, if you like, and then I've been working predominantly into the business development, design, product development, and so forth. So I'm not sprung out of the customer side naturally.
Yeah.
So I felt it was number one for me was to show respect for colleagues, to engage and deeply try to understand the benefits and the challenges of our daily operations, basically.
Yeah.
And I thought it was a way, of course, also to introduce myself to make myself available for people. So it was art by accident. We set it up to be very on. There were no PowerPoints, no conference rooms. We were in reality with our colleagues, co-workers, in stores, in distribution and whatnot. But we also made an honor as we traveled through Poland, Spain, France, UK, Canada, US, Japan, China, Russia, Sweden. These were the markets.
Yeah.
A month it took. So we made an honor to meet customers also in their homes. And the interesting thing was there was a lot of confirmation, which you of course like to hear, of the positives. But there were a couple of deep concerns and worries that was brought. And it was actually brought up very often, as here in Poland it's special, here in Canada it's special, but it was the same thing. And as you might not be surprised to hear, one of the aspects was that we were accessible in the classic IKEA way, full day out, everything instant gratification, so forth.
Yes.
But we were not really accessible digitally and service-wise. And customer after customer, country after country was saying that we have started to deselect you because you're not there.
Because of that,
in the way, So in a way, you can say two things happened. The customers and our co-workers were giving me a brief. So by listening to them, not make the strategy mysterious, but actually just listening to the loudest voices or the repetition of voices, it was all there. So when I came home, I shared with my management group a travel report. And one of my colleagues said, that's the new strategy. And I said, no, it's a travel report. And then he said, no, it's the new strategy. We said, yeah, it is the new strategy. So the current strategy of IKEA, in that sense, is actually a travel report. And I found it, you talked about initially here about life-changing moments. And even if this is not dramatic in that sense, for me, I will never go back to making an intellectual exercise with few people. Engage, and the truths are out there. And I think by having really big ears, you will be able to grasp your strategy in a better way.
No, I love it. And all along my career, I've been someone really connected to the ground, to the field, traveling to 100 countries plus for Microsoft. And I would say this is the only way of, in a way, define strategies, just by taking the pulse in all those countries, exactly as you described, from customers and your people and your employees as well, because I think that gives you so much actually obvious insights into the reality of the business, as opposed sometimes to some headquarters view we all have from meeting between each other. Anyway, wonderful.
I must say also, one of the benefits of it is because when you try to lead change, of course there will be resistance in the system, as always. But there is something when you have the voice of your customer so clear, and that in that way, that is your best tool, I think, to drive the change. Coming back to love the past, create the future.
Yeah, love it. I mean, the voice customers is always truth, actually. So there have been some very significant challenges that I know you faced as a CEO, from the global pandemic through to war in Europe, of course, still today, unfortunately. And you've expressed before that it's been a very humbling experience for you, right? So can you talk about what you found most challenging and how you've managed to steer the company through those crises, and not only to survive, actually to thrive, and to finish with, I would say, how much it has changed your approach to what is called usually crisis management, right? When you've got a big challenge happening somewhere in the world globally, in the way you actually do your role as a CEO today, Jesper?
So these last years have been so challenging, I think, for the world, for all of us, and definitely for myself as well in this role. I still vividly recall the first week of the pandemic. We all go through the cycle of change. First it's an denial, then it's an irritation, and then the true grasping of the seriousness of the situation and how it was disrupting all the plans and the model of IKEA, if you like. So I'm not typically a person that have difficulty sleeping, but I can tell you there were a couple of days and weeks in the early phase of the pandemic where the predictions having, at a moment, I think we had out of 450 stores, only 20 were open.
Wow. Yeah.
And we were predicting massive red. And if you, with no exaggeration, we were seeing a scenario of layoffs and closures and basically a threat to IKEA's existence.
Yeah.
So the interesting learning, I think, is maybe one is this speed of accepting change, right? If you're good at that, and if you have the motto of course, hoping for the best but expecting the worst.
Yeah.
And then I think what was so cool with the IKEA network was that we realized we don't have a map for the situation. There is nothing in the drawer to help us, but we have a good compass with our values.
Yep.
So we basically took the decision with all our leaders to say, do what's right. We were basically dictating to say that the plans, the 2.5 years plans we had for online, we said to the organization, it would be nice if we could do it in 6 weeks.
6 weeks, wow.
Yes, and of course, and the cool thing was we were actually capable in most places to do that. So at that time, actually IKEA didn't have online. We had 1 or 2 markets experimenting, but digital, everybody, I mean, the top managers were out with the masks on and packing goods in our stores. We converted all our stores into fulfillment centers. Yeah. And luckily, since we had listened to our customers 2 years earlier, we actually had started the service setups and the online capabilities digitally. Otherwise, we would have been in deep problems. So basically, unions, everybody was there to say, now we actually roll up our sleeves and we save the company together. So I think 6-8 weeks later, we were actually I give you one example in a very interesting moment, because in the early stages we were actually, as furlough was proposed from many governors, we were signing up for that. 8 weeks later we said, no, but we're going to make it. We're going to be we're going to be not make a lot profit, but we're going to be in the black. Because we actually had a moral discussion to say it's wrong for us that give the furlough to somebody else. So we actually reversed furlough in all markets.
That's amazing.
And thanked the government and said, we actually don't need this.
Yeah.
And the funny thing, in many legislations, it has never happened before. So it was a new experiment. So that was a humbling moment, I must say.
I'm sure. I mean, amazing experiences. I mean, in 2 different ways. Well, you said first, it's about empowering your people and having confidence in their decisions during the pandemic, saying, you guys know what's going on in Poland or Mexico or Sweden or France. You take the decision to take care of the people and customers and so on. And number 2, you probably made a switch and clearly to e-commerce strategically that may not have ever happened. I mean, I don't know, right?
So interesting. I think it would have taken many more years. So in a way, with all the respect of the human suffering of the pandemic and the crisis, the pandemic helped IKEA to become omnichannel in more than double speed. And you can say today we are doing about a quarter of the business online. I wouldn't say it starts to flatten out like that, but you can also say in metropolis areas we're up to 50%. But we not only have it in place with services and distribution, we found the IKEA model in doing it in an effective way. So it's scalable, actually. Yep. So our fear was that it would be economically challenging, but we have found a way to make it actually not only helping our top line, but actually drive economics through the company. And absolutely, the pandemic was the catalyst because it became a survival factor for us.
No, very, very, very interesting and insightful, actually, crisis opportunity. I'd like to shift gears now, Jesper, and talk about some of the other developments you made with IKEA. As we record this episode, we've been experiencing in Europe, in many parts of the world, one of the very warmest summers and years ever. And as a company, you've set some very ambitious targets around sustainability, and you've said in different instances that this is your top priority. I was interested to read the introduction you wrote for The Business of Building a Better World, the leadership revolution that is changing everything, where you talk about this decade being crunch time for companies and governments. And as a reminder for listeners, IKEA's vision is to create a better everyday life for the many people. And you want to inspire and enable 1 billion people to live healthier and more sustainable lives within the limits of the planet by 2030, which is a very exciting vision. So now, from vision to reality, Jesper, can you tell me about not just, of course, the targets you've set for the company, but could you share with us the 3 most challenging and controversial decisions you had to make as the CEO on how to help to make real progress towards IKEA becoming a net zero company? So beyond the statements, what have you done and what have you found super hard to do to make it happen? Yeah.
No, but I think the growing insight to start there also, why is this important for us? You can say there are 3 things. To start with, of course, from an ethical perspective, knowing what we know today, and we all regret that back 30 years ago we had absolutely no understanding, or even 20 years ago, no real conception of the damage that we are causing to the planet and ourselves. So that is, of course, gave us a very late start to everything. That's why this decade, this is it. This is the biggest existentialistic moment for humanity to get this right. Yeah. So from a moral perspective, no, we cannot hand this over to the next generation. It's now. Secondly, it's super interesting. I think a lot of brands out there are doing a big mistake. So if I look at IKEA's customer base, we have recently done the updated study of interviewing 33,000 people in 30 markets.
Yep.
And the awareness of climate change and the worry is way now above 70. There is no place below 70. It's very consistent from US to China to Germany and so forth. If you go down in generations, it increases. And as such, it's very clear that our customers expect us to be a leader. Yeah. That's going to increase, and I think people will start deselecting brands who are not doing whatever they can. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you need to have the intent.
Yes.
The third, an interesting aspect that people misunderstand over and over again is that this should come at a premium. It's very clear from our customers to say, we expect you to fix this. We don't have the money to pay extra for this. So you need to find a way to do it. So we have accepted that. But then again, being climate smart means being resource smart, means being cost smart.
Yes.
So obviously there are areas and decisions to be taken. There are shifts in legislation that needs to happen and so forth. But our general mindset is that climate smart is going to help us make IKEA economically much better in the future. Not only in the future, we see the evidence all around us right now.
Yes.
So I think one of the difficult decisions is maybe about belief. So because typically CEOs and companies want to have a plan before you commit to something. And in this case, I think IKEA, who's known for wanting that, have actually been brave in saying that even if we don't have all the details right,
we'll make it happen.
We don't have the time not to commit. So we need to believe in that we can get this right. And I do believe there has been difficult decisions to
give me one.
To commit without having all the answers.
Give me one of such decisions you made that you could share, obviously, with our listeners that has been not easy to take with your employees and people.
No, but I think I can give you many. They are not. You can say they are just interesting because I think a lot of people would recognize themselves. We decided a few years ago to cancel our total light source business in the incandescent lighting bulbs and so forth. It's big business, big margin, and we decided it must be wrong with the knowledge we had of climate change and whatnot. So we went for LED, and at that time the prices of LED were, I think, 20-fold compared to today. So we took that bet, hoping that we would be able to scale up and make a good business case, which we were capable to do. We're looking at the business today. That was absolutely a brilliant decision. But at the moment, it felt like almost careless. from a business perspective, and we were criticized for that decision internally. It turned out to be the right thing to do.
Yeah.
I've had similar when we developed the code of conduct, which actually leads back to the days of Pakistan and the years shortly after. We developed a code of conduct in IKEA with about 80 questions on both sustainability from a people and planet point of view. There was a deep worry that we would become more expensive. Interesting enough, motivation grow, productivity, quality. There were so many effects that actually helped us do the opposite, to take out cost from the value chain. So I would say my experience and my advice to people is, if it is the right thing, the thing that wants to happen, you have to trust that the economic sense will be there. And I do believe in all of this hesitation that happens in so many places currently and waiting with investments and so forth. This is a game of too early, too late.
Or too late.
And you need to pick the right too early. You don't want to be in the too late here. And that means you need to take some personal risk as a leader as well, of course.
No, it's a wonderful reinforcement of indeed risk taking these days. When you think about this sustainability commitment many companies are taking, probably they all need to take more risk. Actually, starting at the very top. So, continuing to build on that, Jesper, there's obviously a growing emphasis now across the world of measuring impact and measuring what is called now ESG, with the CSRD coming in Europe by 25, where all the companies will report. You know, in a previous podcast episode, I talked to Sir Ronald Cohen, who is a prominent advocate for impact investments. And he has highlighted the need for a shift towards impact investing and the importance of accurately measuring impact, indeed. And you've talked about the economic benefits you're seeing from the choice you've made. You just gave an example, very interesting in terms of basically the lead as an example. And you made many other choices to reduce your carbon footprint. So how do you see the role of measuring impact
Very good.
Evolving in the corporate world, starting with IKEA in your company? And do you balance that, of course, with your profitability promise to your shareholders, right? Because you've got to do both. It's not one and maybe the others.
No, I think, Ian, I'm deeply convinced that the profitability will come by being on the right side of the economic transition. And by the way, also the right side of humanity. But you can say that this is definitely a topic that needs fact-based approach.
Yes.
So you can say the starting point, and my encouragement to all companies, if you don't yet have that in place, is to make your what the technical term of Scope 3 analysis of your footprint, carbon footprint. So that would then, in an IKEA, it's quite easy to understand in a way. You can say Scope 3 is like everything. So in the IKEA point of view, the upstream would be raw material, production, transportation. You have retailing, you have customer transportation, and you have use in life at home, and finally afterlife. So there are seven silos, if you like. And then you need to know what is the carbon impact, so you don't act blindly on what your gut tells you. For instance, a lot of people, including myself, thought that transport would be the biggest contributor for carbon, which is not.
It's not the case.
So in our case, it's actually 50% raw material is the big aspect. One reason it's 50% is because also we have been faster in addressing some of the other ones.
Yes.
So what you need to do, you need to have the fact-based approach. You need to target the different areas with different solutions. And then, interesting enough, ripe the economic benefits of such as well. And then I would say there is certain aspects which I think more and more people are also awakening to, that these different aspects are connected. So circularity connects all of them. If you crack circularity, you can actually get benefits in more of these dimensions. So definitely, as the world, to your question, is speeding up legislation, we working together in World Economic Forum's Climate Alliance, we advocate for simplicity and alignment, of course.
Alignment,
this is an area that invites to technicality, technocracy, bureaucracy, and it's an area where there can be, in the worst case, that companies need to have different reporting regimes, while everybody's at the essence trying to strive for the same thing. So we welcome the reporting, we welcome the transparency, but we also want a bit more collaboration to simplify and align across borders.
Across borders and across legislation as well. I'd like to come back to one point you made, which I think is one of the big bets you are doing underpinning your sustainability commitment. Building a full circular economic model and 100% of your products circular by 2030. I think that's one of your strategic goals. So what does it actually mean to share with our listeners who are not necessarily experts in circularity, Jesper? And can you give us a concrete example of one of circular products that your consumers buy from IKEA today? And how do you plan then to systematize that circularity model
Very good.
to everything you produce, you sell, and then you service after the products are being used by the customers?
It's hard work. To some extent, it's a total transformation of the economy, if you like. But if I start at the end, it's an interesting area because it's riddled by myths. One of the myths is that we should stop consuming, if you say, or the aspect of that consumption is bad, which it is. So the interesting thing is, from a climate science point of view or fact-based point of view,
yes.
One of the mitigations is, of course, reducing unnecessary consumption, prolonging life, supporting second-hand. All these tactics, if you like, are part of our climate plan.
Yes.
But at the essence, in a growing world population, you have to address the core consumption. If you think about the simplicity of by 2050 we need to be at net zero.
Yeah.
So does that mean we would have consumption by 2030 and then have zero consumption by 2050? No, of course not. That would be the end of humanity. We can't eat, sleep, etc. So we cannot abandon the core of consumption itself. And if I give you, I have several great examples from veggie balls to whatnot. But one of the coolest is we have recently, the last 4 or 5 years, in a collaboration with the Dutch government, addressed taking back mattresses. So mattresses might be 8% of our sales or something, but maybe double in climate footprint is quite bulky and material intense.
Yes.
Now the interesting thing is it was difficult for us to find economy in bringing back these products and make new, because the system didn't allow for it. So what happened was that the Dutch government went in to stop subsidizing incineration of mattresses, and then imposed a law to say that you have to drop your old mattress on a collection point. Now imagine 17 million people. In average, a mattress is 10 years, so 1.7 million mattresses per year goes to incineration.
In the Netherlands.
Now, we set up a system, and today we expanded it to 4 units. We have a capacity to take back every mattress in Netherlands, not only our share.
Wow.
And here comes the good news. It's good business. So when we break up the polyester, the foam, the metal, we sell it back into the supply chain to make new products. It's actually, it's not the best business I ever seen, but it's actually making a lot of business sense. Yeah. And thereby, you're not only you're not prolonging the life of mattresses only or minimizing unnecessary. And by the way, very few people buy a mattress on a spontaneous level, right? It's a necessity-driven purchase. Yeah. So now we're capable, through plugging in EV transport in the logistics side, to actually create a consumption solution for mattresses that is climate neutral, which is amazing. So when people say this is a vision or an idea, but it's not realistic, here you have one of the cases. And if I may, Jean-Philippe, because I think this is important, people have hard to believe that it's possible. You have to sacrifice growth for decoupling carbon. So IKEA, since the 2016, report a sales increase of 24.8%. So we grew since then. We report a decoupling of carbon of absolute minus 13.6.
Wow.
So it's not relative, it's absolute. So
in absolute,
that's one example to say it seems to be a good idea to grow and decouple carbon. So basically we are currently updating our goals because we're almost at the original 2030 goal.
Yes.
We also need to update that because of new insights in science and so forth. But it gives me hope that decoupling carbon is a good business idea, actually.
Well, wonderful example you took and you share with all of us, Jesper, of circularity. And I'm sure you're busy doing that on every products and changing the mix of your materials as well to again, get to that net zero IKEA even sooner than later. It looks like you've got a plan, actually.
We do, and it's humbling. In some areas it's easier, some we still struggle.
Super hard.
Still, we're looking for the answers. As you said, it might even be that we need to abandon some materials and find new solutions. So some of it is not easy, but we definitely the 50% target 2030, which is the one that we spend most time on right now.
Yes.
It seems to be in our reach.
Yeah. So one of the ways, Jesper, to get inspiration, but also to get some real solution, I found myself, and within Microsoft and outside Microsoft with my different roles, is to partner with change makers, social entrepreneurs, what is being called these days impact entrepreneurs around the world. There are a number of wonderful companies whose North Star is all about having a positive impact in the world. So your company has a long tradition, and actually we are partnering together with the WEF, with Schwab Foundation, with this World Economic Forum Alliance for Social Entrepreneurship, to ensure that big enterprise can not only get inspiration, but actually can procure product services from such entrepreneurs. So can you tell us more about how IKEA has been involved and is involved with social entrepreneurs, impact entrepreneurs around the world, both in terms of strategy, but also hands-on experimentation products, and what do you expect from that in the future?
Well, there are different exciting opportunities. I think one of the starting points for us to address social entrepreneurs, we had the opportunity to invite the now late Professor Hans Rosling, who was, I think, the mastermind of understanding long-term demographic changes and an optimist of rank. He came to us and he took our vision of serving the many people, and he pointed at the gap. He said, you have on one hand, you have your customers, you have yourself, your suppliers, then you have nothing, and then you have IKEA Foundation, who basically do philanthropic work for the people who have the least, maybe. Yeah. But he pointed us in a direction to say there are so many people who the barrier to be a big supplier to you is just too big. So we started a social entrepreneurship in two ways. Yeah. One was actually in the close to our retailing where we work. For instance, there can be an entrepreneur who works with stitching or giving services to IKEA products. They could be circularity, secondhand, and so forth. And the second was basically to look into offer job opportunities for people through creating products. Sometimes more handicraft related. The point was, though, to see that other people have an opportunity to build something from the ground, which is basically a program that we also applied together with the IKEA Foundation's direction. We actually did, for instance, set up such entrepreneurship in Jordan. It was one of my favorite projects to actually offer job opportunities to refugees from Syria, from the crisis. So in a way, you can say it serves our social mission quite well. It gives us an opportunity to learn. Then you have the total other end, of course, where we are investing into new technologies. We recently, I think yesterday, announced a collaboration with H2 Steel to basically now introduce green steel in all our properties and real estate. So that's not a social entrepreneur, but it's an entrepreneur who starts from very little and has a vision about the new economy, which we like to support.
I think we need both, actually. We need both the inspiration of social entrepreneurs and also from, I would say, innovation-led companies. I'd like to finish a couple of questions because time is going very fast. Yes, on leadership, going back to the leadership discussion we had early in your days. In an article you co-wrote for Fortune a couple of years ago, you said that we need to scrap the old leadership model and replace it with one that places humanity, humility, and brave action at the heart of everything we do, which is something I totally agree with. Indeed, I recently had Stephen M. R. Covey on a podcast to talk about his latest research on leadership, a new model that is explored and written about in his book, Trust and Inspire. And your leadership style is very resonant of the ideas he proposes. What he said is, in Trust and Inspire, it's about a new way of leading that starts with the belief that people are creative, collaborative, and full of potential. People with this kind of leader are inspired to become the best version of themselves and to produce their best work. People don't want to be managed. People want to be led. So how do you see this new way of leadership developing? And what are the most important lessons of leadership you've learned along the way to become a role model in doing more of that?
Wow, it's a big topic and an important one. I think if I start with the last question, I think one of the things personally that I've learned to accept and maybe also change my own nature in a way. So I think to accept dilemmas, and I've been in my early days, I've been far too light on seeking the fast track into inspiration and movement. But I think these days, I think when I run into some juicy dilemmas, normally they are the best. Make them the best friend. Take your time to explore them, expand your horizon, because in true dilemmas lies very often the great opportunities to make an impact. But as to your introduction of your question, I do believe myself, I've come to a point in life where I find it totally uninteresting to work for making money or making somebody rich, or to drive growth as the only element. So I think the future belongs to, I hope and believe, to leaders, companies, organizations that has a purpose to serve humanity.
Yes.
And I don't see the contradiction between the business opportunity and doing good. I think that is the new corporate environment that we will look for. Of course, you can say when you talked about Unilever, it started with a beautiful idea. Microsoft started with a beautiful idea to serve humanity. Of course, there is always an entrepreneur and a spirit, but very soon there comes something more fundamental and deep within it. So I believe to a certain extent managing is maybe step one in leadership is about management and managing things or a team. Step two maybe is leading transformations. Microsoft, like IKEA, have undergone great transformation. You need to have believers, flag carriers. You need to instigate momentum, not perfection. Then I think level 3 for me, maybe it's also with the respect of our founder, as the deep insight of understanding that culture is even stronger. So if you can invest in culture, you will have resilience for the unexpected and tough times. And right now I'm curiously experimenting what I think might be the next level. And I call it servant leadership. I don't know if it's a term like that, but
it's been existing.
To a certain extent, yes. No, but I believe truly that if you take out your own ego, if you take on your and look at what is it actually that you can do, and in the servant leadership thinking, it leads you also to believe that the ultimate goal for you as a leader is that you're not needed anymore. If you see my point, so how can you contribute to change and building something? And when you're done, then basically it can continue without your energy and passion. That's where I am right now in my leadership development. Much left to learn.
You are on what is called your second mountain of leadership, I think, Jesper. So almost finishing, in our Positive Leadership podcast, we often talk to leaders, all kind of leaders actually, very different types of people, in the way they find resources in themselves to create a positive energy. And I'd like you to talk about the way you create your moments of calm in your day, the way you relax and unwind. I understand you are a sailor, and I understand that I've been recently in the islands in Sweden. You need to be a good sailor, but also you love music. As a matter of fact, you play guitar. I understand you play actually really well guitar. And you've said before that playing guitar is your yoga, and you do it every day. So tell me about your guitar practice. Are you in a band? What kind of music do you play? And how does it help you create positive energy? Not just within yourself, but with others, right? In your days, in your weeks, when you have some tough decisions to make.
No, but thank you. I think it was beautifully said. I think it's an important quality to be able to be generating of positive energy.
Yeah.
And for me, originally introverted nature, it means that I need time for myself. I need time to focus. So I think if I look at the hours I play guitar, I'm absolutely hopeless. I should have been much better at this point. But the point with my interest in music and playing guitar is really the relaxation and the energy of it. So it can be beautiful, it can be smooth, it can be also I like. So I'm currently the lead singer in a heavy metal band, the best heavy metal band in Hong Kong.
Wow.
Yes. And we haven't met in a while, I have to admit, but. The band members are still there, and we've had a lot of fun. But I think I do believe it's important to find your source of recuperation and focus. And again, music for me works like meditation. My wife is a yoga teacher, and she helps me with meditation. But music works like the best meditation because it totally relaxes the mind and shifts my focus to
focus
something
on.
else. So I've loved that. That's my hobby, and that's my way of getting a moment of recuperation. So definitely.
I can feel
And
it.
there's a lot of people who share that, by the way. We had, I tell you a funny story. We had, I think it was in May, the first pandemic year.
Yeah.
I've had a tough week with a lot of tears and people being in isolation and whatnot. So at the end of the day, I was inspired by BBC who did a similar setup. And so I wrote a song and I recorded it at home. I had some friends at a studio who polished it. And we sent it to some 50 people in IKEA in all countries.
Wow.
So we had people singing, people playing drums, people playing guitar, bass, and we actually managed to compile it. And if you look for the IKEA band and a song called Rain on Java, you will see some 50 people in IKEA actually performing a song in isolation during COVID. So I think music has the power to bring people together.
That's a very inspiring story. Now, my really last question, because I know you're super busy, Jesper. You know, we are in 2023. So what would be your coaching message, 2023, for young 25 years old Jesper starting his professional career? Not necessarily in IKEA, in any place in the world, maybe in Sweden, maybe in Pakistan or somewhere else. What do you think are the most meaningful life lessons, leadership lessons you've had to share back with this young Jesper to apply in his life in 2023 as he gets started? What would that be?
Wow, what an opportunity. So I have 25 advice now. No, to keep it short, I think the advice I would give to myself would be twofold, I think. Don't worry so much. I would tell myself. I think when I look back over the years, I've worried too much about the future and so on. And I think, as such, breathe the optimism within yourself. And it will guide you to the right places. And I think then finally that's very related to my mother's old advice to try to look for the things you're good at. If you don't find it, keep trying. And then find the place where you're really happy. And if you find both, that is a career. Forget about titles, forget about money, all of these things will come. So look for what you're good at and look for what makes you happy.
What a wonderful end, coming back to your mom and the first question about your family, childhood, Jesper. It's been wonderful to have you on the podcast, and thank you so much for sharing all those moments with us. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for the opportunity. Have a nice day.
Thank you, Jesper.
Thank you.